Alrighty. So a question comes up pretty often, how loot filters work. And basically, you can open it by default by using Shift F, and you can see by default that you wouldn't have a filter here. But I already have one that I set up here. And so first I want to talk about why you might want a filter. Because by default, the game does use a pretty traditional rarity system. So, like, a white item on the ground wouldn't have any affixes on it. And, I'm sure most of you are probably familiar with what affixes are if you played Path of Exile at all. But this item, for example, has two prefixes and two suffixes. And you can see this because on the item, the little notches to the left and right of the effect that the affix has shows whether it's a prefix or a suffix. So an item can have up to two of each unless it's unique or something, because uniques can get crazy sometimes. But most of the items you're going to encounter in the game are going to be 0 to 4. So by default, 0 would be a white item. 1 to 2 would be magic or a blue item, such as this one or this one. And then 3 to 4 is yellow. It's rare, so to speak. The issue with this, though, is this doesn't actually care whether the affixes are tier 1. And so, like, if you have your settings set up, you just hold Alt and you can see the details here. So, like, if you can see, the spell damage one is tier 5. The fire resist is tier 5. The healing effectiveness is only tier 2. But that's not really why I cared about this item. So what can happen is an item will drop where it could have 4 affixes on it. It'll show yellow, it'll be rare, but they could all be tier 1. It could be a garbage item even if it's on an otherwise decent base. And so what you might want to do with with a loot filter is to set it up so that you're seeing loot that's more relevant to what you're looking for. So, for example, the one I prefer, it actually sorts by the tier quality or the rank of the tier on items. So I have an option to hide normal items because some people use this, and if you're doing like high level echoes or something and you're past the point where a decent white base isn't enough, where it has to have good affixes too, then you might check this, and then it will no longer show the white items on the ground. And note that even with your loot filter settings, you can still hold Alt to see items that are on the ground, even through your filter. So it's not as if you're completely locked out of seeing the item somehow. So this filter I have set up, it's so here's an example. This rule right here, I have basically all the non-class affixes selected, which you just go through manually and just check all the boxes. So why did I have this? Oh, because I was looking for adaptive strike, I guess. But anyway, there's some idle stuff here too, but most of that won't matter because idols have their own rules. But this rule right here states that if an item drops where the highest tier affix is equal to rank 4, then it'll recolor it to this sort of chartreuse green. And so I have a similar rule, which is above it, sorry, that's not the chartreuse one, that's the dark green. This one is that if it has at least 2 such affixes with more or less or more equal to tier 4, then it'll emphasize. And what this does is it puts the item in all caps. So I'll just pull out a bunch of like random items to just throw on the ground, and you can see how the loot filter reacts. Oops. Man, they need to fix that. Okay, so you're seeing all kinds of stuff. So this one, being all caps, you can see that it has two items that are tier 4, or two affixes that are tier 4, and the other one is not. But it satisfies the conditions for that filter rule. And so here, this one, it looks for something that's tier 3. And the reason I like to have these is mostly for leveling. But what happens is, like, you get higher level, you're not going to care to see an item like this anymore. But the reason I held on to it is because if I make another character, I want to use it as a crafting base or something, it's available. And so as you get higher level, you might tune out visually some of the lower tier colors. But if you don't want to do that yourself and you don't like the clutter, all you have to do is just come down and uncheck these boxes. And then it's not going to recolor those drops. So they'll probably just show up as whatever the default is, but you can set up complementary rules to these to hide those items instead. Or if you don't mind a little extra micromanagement, just come through and change this rule from recolor to hide. Just remember to change it later when you need the rule to revert to the previous behavior. So with that out of the way, there's a few different approaches someone might take to using their loot filter. This one's just my preferred one. It's not as if I'm trying to promote it as being the correct one. Not at all. Everyone's got a different way that they want to go about this, and it really depends on your needs and your goals. For this one, I'm just looking for stuff that's usable while I level and progress, because I'm not really the kind of person who cares about the end-to-end game, like the post-end game, empowered echoes, stuff like that so much. There are people that do, and their filters will look very different from mine. I mostly just like to kind of test builds and see what everything does, and if you're going to use a wide variety of different items for that kind of testing, then you don't want to hide too much stuff. You might want something that's more class specific, but I'm not that picky because I play a wide variety of builds and it goes across all the classes. But something else you'll see with this filter is this one right here. It shows supposedly magic, rare, unique, set, exalt, etc. Right? But it's yellow. And what this rule actually is this is just to show class affixes. And so if an item drops that has something specific to one of these classes, it'll show up as yellow. So for Primalist, you'll see all these different things, and there's a few exceptions because I filter those out for something else, and it's possible too with new updates that I just didn't change it, such as the adaptive spell damage for the crow, because I hadn't updated this filter since storm crows were added. So it's just that easy. Just add it. And then just click update and you're good. I use this sort of white for kind of lower quality idols, ones I may not care about as much, but perhaps during the leveling process they might be good enough. The red one is one of the big ones I look out for. It's why I chose such a prominent color, because what this is any item that has plus skill levels will fall into this filter. So plus level to whatever skill, boom. Oh, and I forgot to update it for the new patch, so not a big deal. We can just go through and do that real quick. Fireball pierce chance, no, that goes in the yellow filter. It's not a plus skill. Oops. Plus level of Storm Crow, Sentinel, Rogue. Alright, this is good. So, the different colors all do different things, and some of them are like, I wanted a slight adjustment to my existing filter to find something a little more specific. Like this pink one here, you can see it wants at least its highest tier affix to have a minimum tier of 3, and it wants or no, sorry, that part's true, but like this one I was actually specifically targeting certain affixes because I didn't have that many shards for those ones, so I wanted them to stand out so I wouldn't miss them. The other rule I was looking at involves totals, but I think I already showed that one. And then purple here is kind of the default color for the tier 6 and up items, and these ones are commonly referred to as exalted. So anything that drops so anything 6 or up shows up as this color, and then and the purple one is if it has at least 2 of them, which these are going to be ultra rare. Like finding 2 exalted on an item, those are they hardly ever happen. It's one of the rare things you can actually find in the game. So let's say you don't want to do all the work to set up a loot filter, or you maybe don't fully understand the rules and you're looking for a shortcut. That's totally legitimate. All you have to do for that is go to usually the forum would be a good place to look, but you might be able to ask in Discord if someone has something, or just a general Google search. Just look for last Epoch item loot filters. Try to find them preferably close in date to the more recent updates. But all you would do is just download that, and then from here, from the no filter screen, go import, and we're just going to open filter. Now I used Heavy's Mage here for the example. He has a topic on the forum where he does class filters. So you just choose whichever filter for the current class you're playing, and he explains his approach in that forum post. It's actually a really good approach. It's a really good loot filter. It's intended for more like newer players, but I could see some more experienced players using it with just the minorest of tweaks. It's really well thought out post. It's really well put together list of filters. So shout out to Heavy for that one. But basically, you open this, just Control A to select all, Control C to copy, and then you can just close this part. Go to import, paste clipboard contents. Basically this is a Control V button for the filter it's going to make, and then just confirm, call it a day. You can go through, see what all these rules do, but he explained that in the post. And if there's any rule that you want specifically enabled or disabled, you can just go through and just check or uncheck them. So it's not too difficult on that end. And then it doesn't there's no reason you can't just use all of his class filters and just choose the one for whatever class you're playing. The way I play, I like to look out for stuff from my other builds while I'm playing my current one. So his approach doesn't really suit my needs, but it's not because it's a bad approach. It's just because I have different needs. Anyway, what do you want to do? Like, let's say you want to create your own filter, right? Well, it's really easy. You just click Create Filter. Select New. Name it. I'm just going to call it Default, because why not? I don't care about descriptions. And choose any icon. Doesn't matter, because it's just what shows up here in this part. So I'm going to add a rule. Condition. So the condition lets you choose what the filter is going to impact. And basically, what I want to show is kind of funny, but we'll go with affix with advanced options equal to 0. And then I'm just going to select them all just to ensure that the rule works. It would be nice if there was like a category button up here to just select everything within there, just to reduce the number of extra clicking you have to do. Okay, and then we're going to recolor, and we're going to have this be white. Just add. Okay. So basically, any item that drops that has no affixes, this is just going to be white. So let's add another rule. We're going to recolor this one too. We're going to say blue. Affix. Just repeat the process. And this is if you want the rule to affect every affix. If you only want it to affect specific ones, you only specifically check those boxes. So if I only wanted to see like spell damage, there's a way to do that, which I'll go over in a second here. So we'll say at least one total affix tiers. No. Tier of individual affixes. No. Tiers. Okay. What I was gonna do is basically recreate the default as if you didn't even have a filter on, but it doesn't seem to actually let me choose the number of affixes on here. I thought there was a way to do that. Maybe I'm just being dumb. That's not a big deal. Anyway, screw that rule. So just as a different example, let's go back to that spell damage thing. So what you want to do is type in spell damage in your search, and this will sort out everything that applies. So we'll say spell damage and mana cost. These are all good. We don't, for the purposes of this, we're assuming we're an actual caster, so we don't really care about the minion side of it, so we'll exclude that. I'm going to assume we're playing a mage for the purposes of this filter, so I don't care about pets. Adaptive spell damage while channeling. This might be good if you want to use a skill like Disintegrate. Spell damage leads to health. This is more of a judgment / preference call, because even though it's related to spell damage, the effect isn't actually providing any. It is just basically a life leech effect, and you may want a different filter for that. But we could say we care about these others in case we want to use this filter on a caster prime list. I'm not 100% sure that this particular affix works without pets, but we'll just assume that it does for the moment. Spell damage while low health. And alright, that looks good. So this one we're going to recolor. Let's go something noticeable like the bright green, because we might really care about the affix. And then you might say you want at least one of these on the item, and you don't want to spend too many shards or fracture too many items trying to get this into a reasonable spot. So we're going to go with more or equal to tier 3. So the minimum tier that this has to be is tier 3 in order to show up on the filter this way. But what's important to note is with this rule, we had selected idle affixes as well. Idles only go up to tier 1. So that even though we have them selected in the rule, as long as we have this condition set up, it's still going to exclude those idles. So you want to be careful that if your rule has an internal conflict like that, you're aware of it and you either set up another rule to deal with it, or you adjust the condition to no longer violate that or cause that contradiction. So we'll address that real quick. let's say recolor, and we'll do the dark green because it's similar in theme. Choose spell damage again. Oh, not the leech one. Spell damage roll transformed. If you have a totem. Okay. And then for this one, we may want to add another condition. It might be item type, and we'll select idols. So now, the reason you want to add that second condition is because if you set this rule up without... So, like, if you had set this rule up and had other items included, then it's going to show those other items as well, and not just the idols. Because the affixes we chose apply specifically only to idols, the second condition is technically redundant, but if you want to make alterations to the rule later, it may be helpful. So it just depends on how you're actually trying to use the filter itself. But basically the way it works is the bottom of the rules list is your baseline rules. These are the things that are going to be always true in a sense. Anything you put higher up on the stack are considered exceptions to the rules if there's any conflict. So, like I said, if I set this rule up on top and it was to be, at least tier 1, or if I were to even get rid of the condition entirely, then it would have overlap with the idols, which means that this rule right here, you would never actually see it take effect because this one is overriding it all the time. So with this one, the problem is solved in a sense because the minimum affix tier being 2 or greater would mean that idols are inherently excluded. That is until or unless the developers decide to increase the tier rank of idols, the possible tier ranks. So if they make it so that idols can have tier 2 or tier 3, these rules may need to be revisited and adjusted accordingly. But for now, it's better to play it safe and make sure that it all works correctly so that this one will override the general items rule. And you might even just go through the list and be like, I've already got a rule set up for that. I don't actually need to have these selected. These don't have to be included in that, and then I'll have to worry about it later, and there's no conflict. So, basically the loop filter can do a wide variety of things for you depending on your needs, and you might do a little trial and error, see what works, see what doesn't, see if it's behaving the way you want. And when you're first setting it up and you're still learning the rules of how the loop filter works, you want to make sure you're still holding alt and looking over the different items to verify that they are behaving correctly. Because if you see an item on the ground that your loop filter had excluded or miscolored or something, you're like, oh, that means there's a problem with my filter and I need to figure out what that is and what I need to do to fix it. But anyway, I think that covers most of the things someone might want to know. I think there would be plenty of people on the forums willing to help, plenty of people in Discord willing to help. The community is generally pretty friendly. Definitely helpful when it comes to how-tos and, what does this do kind of questions. So, since I won't be using this filter or expanding it more, I can just delete it and it's gone. And I won't be using Heavy's filters either. Just like I said, they don't really suit my needs, but they are excellent. So definitely try them out if you're not wanting to put all this work in yourself. This filter I set up initially took me about half hour to set up, and then I've tinkered with it off and on, 5-10 minutes here or there, over a couple weeks to get it about where I want it. So I think that will conclude this short tutorial explanation, and hopefully you guys can find a system that works for you.